Honorable members, that is the agenda of the day. I have asked Sam to put it here so that we appreciate the limited time that we have, and we will have to be a bit efficient today. I know some of the issues might attract a lot of contribution from us, but I would like the members to appreciate that we've got those two items, unlike the other meeting where we have one presentation, we've got two presentations. One is from the Department of Public Enterprise on issues emanating from the SONA. We will be in a position, those issues that are affecting this portfolio committee and our state-owned entities, and also will be dealing with the business rescue practitioners of Mango on progress regarding the business rescue processes. And also, I think the department will be taking us through on those issues. Without wasting our time, I will suggest that we go straight. I was checking here if there is any mini deputy minister, maybe is also on the cabinet also, because I don't see him here. Maybe we won't have any ministry as a shoulder to sort of giving some political overview on this thing. We'll have to go straight to the acting DG to take us through with the first presentation on issues that emanate from the SONA that are to do with this portfolio committee of public enterprises. Can I give to you Ms. Modisani?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members and the colleagues of the department. I won't waste too much time. I'm sorry, just my voice is a bit croaky. I'm just coming down with a cold. In terms of the proceedings today, Ms. Advocate Makobe, he will assist in terms of presenting with the Mango business practitioner, and Ivandra will cover on the transit issues. But without further ado, can I just ask for the presentation to be flighted, please?
Yeah, I've made you a co-host and Advocate Makobe. I'm not sure who's gonna slide it before between the two of you. You may share acting DG.
I've got to. Can you just flat it on your side, please? On my side, I've got too many documents opened here.
Mr. Machumi, you can make me the co-host. Okay, there we go.
I've done so, Level.
Chair, without further ado and taking guidance from what you indicated that we should be mindful of the time, can I start, Chair?
Yes, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of briefing the portfolio on the key issues emanating from the 2023 State of the Nation address, we will provide those and also provide a progress update on those issues emanating from that. Regarding the priorities that were outlined on the SONA regarding the state-owned enterprises reforms, we have indicated that many of the SOCs are struggling with significant debt regarding underinvestment in infrastructure, the effects of state capture, and the shortage of skills. And in terms of the commitments that we've actually made in terms of addressing those, we are implementing the recommendation of the PSEC, which is the Presidential SOC Council, to establish state-owned holding company as part of a centralized shareholder model that will ensure that we have an effective oversight SOCs. And just in terms of the other commitment that we made in SONA is that government will support Eskom to secure funding for diesel for the rest of the financial year, this financial year, and this will go a long way in limiting the severity of load shedding as we've seen it, to enable the Eskom to run OCG plants in terms of when they experience elevated levels of load shedding. And the other SONA commitments, National Treasury, the President did indicate that Eskom will be finalizing the debt takeover in a manner that will be equitable and fair, and that will enable the utility to make the necessary investment in the maintenance of the transmission. And a lot of work has been done, steps have been done to undertake this work, as we have seen in the pronouncement of the Minister of Finance budget speech, but I will elaborate in detail later on in terms of this particular area. In terms of what we've outlined around the State of the Nation address, the President indicated that we need to reduce the severity of load shedding, because the immediate risk is to dramatically reduce the elevated levels of load shedding that are going to come in the coming months. And the key interventions that have been indicated in order to deal with elevated stages of load shedding, it includes, amongst others, to fix the coal-fired power stations and also improve the availability of existing supply, and also accelerate private investment in new generation capacity, and also to make sure that the procurement of additional new capacity in the form of renewables, gas, and battery storage is being accelerated, and also make sure that businesses and households invest in rooftop solar plants. These interventions will support Eskom to secure additional funding for diesel for the rest of the financial year. And I can share with the committee that in terms of this particular initiative, diesel was indeed secured in December and also in January by Eskom to minimize the impact of load shedding. In the absence thereof, we could have seen a much more higher levels of load shedding. It did have a good impact of we did minimize the impact of load shedding. As a result, Eskom was able to use diesel plants when the system came under strain. And in terms of deploying the resources to improve the reliability of the 6 power stations contributing to load shedding, I need to indicate that the Eskom subcommittee board, which is seized with this matter of identifying the power plants that are really causing elevated stages of load shedding, those have been identified and they've been prioritized and they're being ring-fenced to make sure that they're being restored. And in terms of dealing with this, they're also going through and making sure that they bring in they also bring in skills to augment the current skilled personnel at senior levels to be deployed at these power stations. So that is one of the initiatives that is actually being done. And going to the next slide, in terms of on the rail network, can I just ask Ivandra, can just come in, please? I just need to...
Sure, certainly. Morning, Chair, committee members, colleagues. Yeah, on the rail network investment, the President did mention that the network has suffered from many years of underinvestment. There's also been a lack of maintenance, and we've seen an increase in criminal activity over the last few years. all of which has contributed to inefficiencies in the rail system. We do have the national rail policy that was approved by Cabinet last year. And the policy is really one of the key pillars is prioritizing investment in the rail network and also improving the competitive environment in rail through making provision for third-party access on the rail network. Now, Transnet is busy with this process. They've started the slot sales process last year. They did an initial call for proposals for third-party operators on 2 of the corridors and did manage to place 1 contract on the line to East London. At the same time, for the longer term, there is a need for a Transnet roadmap. Essentially, the market has changed quite significantly for logistics. And equally, the policy environment has changed a lot now with the new rail policy. So there is a need to clearly articulate how Transnet is going to position itself within the national freight system in the long term. And that's the roadmap process that government is working on principally. So through Operation Vulindlela, we, PPE, Treasury, and Department of Transport is working in partnership to develop a roadmap for Transnet. There's also the issue of the Transnet partnerships, where the president mentioned that Transnet and private companies are going to conclude partnerships at the Durban and Nouga container terminals. Now, that process is well underway. And I think Transnet indicated that they will conclude that process around April or May. I think, Chair, really the rationale behind the partnerships is manifold. So firstly, there's a need to bring in some funding to invest in equipment and capacity expansion, but equally, we seeking partners that have good market know-how, that have an international network of terminals that would allow these 2 terminals to plug into that international network, and through that to improve maritime connectivity for South Africa. Go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Advandra. In terms, Chair, in terms of the update on the what we've undertaken in terms of the SONA commitment, as I indicated that the Presidential SOC Council was appointed in 2020 and recommended that we should have a centralized shareholder management model for the key commercial entities. And these in essence is that we're trying to separate policy making, regulatory functions, and minimize political intervention there, and introduce greater professionalism to manage the state assets in a manner to ensure that there is shareholder value enhancement and protection thereof. The commitments that were made is that an overarching legislation for SOCs will be tabled in Cabinet this financial year and Parliament in the next financial year. And in terms of progress in that regard, the SOE bill has been developed and it's now being socialized with the different stakeholders. And also preparatory work has also begun for the establishment of the state holding company to house the strategic SOCs and to execute these in a coordinated manner. And in this regard, I'm pleased to actually announce that we have managed to make great strides in this regard, that a business case for HoldCo has been formulated and developed, and together with the bill and the business case will then be part of what will be taken through the internal approvals, so that we actually do give effect to the operationalization and the realization of the whole core. And in terms of the SONA commitments as well, progress on the recommendation of the SOCs in terms of which SOCs needs to be consolidated, restructured, and repurposed. This is part of the work that is being done by the crisis and consolidation work stream, that they've done excessive work in that regard, whereby they've developed a criteria, or rather a metrics, in terms of determining which SOCs at national level needs to be retained, and which ones should be consolidated, and which ones needs to be repurposed. This is the work and the progress that we've done to make sure that that which has been pronounced in the SONA commitments indeed do get traction. Just going to the next slide. In terms of the SONA commitments, Eskom intends to intensify the maintenance program to reverse the many years whereby maintenance and underperforming of existing plants has been neglected, and also to ensure that the reforms as government is undertaking them, that those do see the light of day, and ensure that the amendments in the era for public comments, those take place. In terms of giving effect to this, Eskom is making strides with the department overseeing the process of Eskom unbundling, whereby the department, I just need to take the colleagues through context that to refresh them. The department in 2019 published a roadmap for Eskom in terms of how the electricity supply industry, for the separation of Eskom into three subsidiaries, mainly the transmission, the distribution, and the generation side. This roadmap actually did, it was extensively socialized even with Parliament and different stakeholders, and we continue to monitor this. Pursuant to this, the President did pronounce that to unbundle Eskom into these companies under Eskom Holdings, the reason being that we want to bring transparency and accountability in terms of overseeing these three subsidiaries. And in terms of progress, in December 2021, the NTCA, the Eskom National Transmission Company of South Africa, it was indeed corporatized as a wholly owned subsidiary of Eskom, and the licensing from the NERSA to operationalize this is still ongoing. We are, as a department, DMRE, as well, and NERSA engaging in terms of making sure that this particular issue is being accelerated and it moves forward, because the transmission company is quite critical in ensuring that the unbundling process of which we embarked on in 2019 does realize its objective, because transmission company is very key in ensuring that the new capacity that is going to be secured, it gets connected appropriately. And the Eskom distribution company, it is going to be established by the end of December 2023, and this will be followed by the establishment of the generation company. This process is expected to improve financial stability, resulting in more cash from operations to increase maintenance, and it will also increase the energy availability factor in that regard. So in terms of the progress that has been made in the transport sector, Ivandra, do you want to come in terms of providing the committee with the update in terms of that, in terms of what Transnet has done?
No, certainly, DG. committee members, there's a few slides covering Transnet's progress around what's in progress to improve efficiencies in the port and rail environment. So the first one here talks about the progress that has been made on the port, specifically on the marine services side. Is the key issue here is you don't want the ships coming in and waiting outside the ports. So you want to get them into the port and berth it so that they can be handled as quickly as possible. Now to that end, there has been some challenges with the marine equipment. So TNPA has started a fleet renewal program, if you like, and some of the things we can report is around the pilot boat restoration. The tender has been presented to the bid adjudication committee on the 10th of January. For the helicopters, the phase 1 request for information has been completed. RFI is in progress. On the workboat engines, that's upgrading some of the engines on existing workboats. The project is in progress. Also looking at the replacement of 2 launches, that's in progress. Repairs and maintenance of navigational safety equipment, also in progress. Acquisition of 3 tugs, the tender has been advertised and will close, well, it's closed in January. And then the acquisition of a further 5 tugs, that's also expected to close or has closed in Jan. So a lot of work being done on the marine equipment side to assist that process of reducing ship waiting time. From the port terminal side, there's also various initiatives to improve efficiencies. In the first instance, we're looking at training employees to operate more than one type of equipment, and 24 employees have already completed that training and received their certification. There's training of an additional 8 employees in progress. Port terminals equipment also challenged. We do have challenges with the age of the equipment and consequently their reliability. So there is a program to replace the equipment that's past its useful operating life. There we've got for Durban Container Terminal Pier 1, there was a process to acquire 16 rubber-tired gantries, but there are some legal challenges, and Transnet is looking at how they can move that process along. For haulers, there's a procurement in process for 47 haulers for Cape Town Container Terminal and 50 for Nuka Container Terminal. For DCT Pier 2, which is our main container terminal, there's 33 straddle carriers. The business case for that has been completed and going through approvals. And same on the DCT Pier 2. There's a further 22 ZPMC straddle carriers where the original equipment manufacturer has concluded an amendment to the contract. They're now going to be focused much more on ensuring the reliability of the machines. As of end of September, following refurbishments were completed. That's 25 ship-to-shore cranes, 22 rubber-tired gantries, and 9 straddle carriers. At the same time, there's also interventions taking place on the labor side, looking at how we can improve the incentive scheme for container terminal operations. And there has been improvement in that respect. So we've seen productivity increase. Obviously, the performance was impacted by the strike in October, and then the subsequent recovery from that strike. But the scheme is being embedded, and like we said, it is showing benefits. And this effort is now being complemented through workforce planning engagement. So looking at workforce plans for operations, for technical and engineering. There's further engagements with labor around shift patterns to make sure that we can minimize the downtime between shift changes, and agreements being reached with the United National Transport Union, and negotiations are in progress with SATAU as well. And the terminal management teams are busy putting together the implementation plans to turn around some of the loss-making terminals. Finally, on this side, we're looking at semi-automation to minimize the impact of weather disruptions. And there is a study that's underway to look at our options in that respect. On the partnerships, the proposals for the private partners for Durban and Nuga container terminals, the shortlisted respondents from the request for qualifications process were announced 12th of August. We have 10 bidders for the Durban container terminal and 4 bidders for the Nuga container terminal. And like I mentioned, Transnet is on course to conclude this award by April 2023. On the third-party access to the freight rail network, TFR advertised 16 slots on 1 April 2022. That process has been completed now, and the announcement of the successful applicant was made on 25th of November. We are looking at expanding the scope of this third-party access process, and that's going to be done also in partnership with the team from government that's working on the roadmap. But Transnet has committed to do the separation of infrastructure from operations and create a rail network infrastructure manager by October. You can just go down to the next one, please. So this is the rail corridor from Gauteng to Gqeberha. That's we're looking at extending it and expanding capacity to move automotive exports from the Ford factory to Gqeberha, and the funding and financing remains challenging. We've done studies to estimate how much we're going to need on the infrastructure side and how much we're going to need on the rolling stock side. The service design has been done, and currently Transnet, IDC, and DBSA are looking at how to design an appropriate commercial model for the project that will allow for some private funding to be crowded in, particularly on the rolling stock side. The project has moved beyond the pre-feasibility, starting with the detailed feasibility study at the moment. And yes, they haven't identified any fatal flaws at this point. I think that should cover it. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, without further ado, can I probably ask Advocate Makobe to take us through the presentation on the mango? And I do need to indicate that I've got another colleague from the department, Donald Nkadimeng, who just indicated that he's also on the platform. Can I hand over to Advocate Makobe?
Sorry, Acting DG, have you done totally with the first presentation before we go to the next one? Because I thought we'll allow members to engage the first one and then we finish and we come to the next one. But we have to check with the members first if they are comfortable for all of the presentation made now. Honorable members.
Chair.
Yes, who's that?
Kachalia.
Okay, Kachalia.
Chair, I think the mango issue is quite separate and deals with business rescue process, and there's separate issues and separate questions will arise. I would be in favor of dealing with the current issues and then moving on to that. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any second, honorable members? Or is there anyone opposed to that process, that we deal with this one once and for all, and then we put it aside and we come to the mango?
Yeah, I second, Chair.
Thank you.
Agree, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. Because that is the first presentation. Let's go through the list of members to contribute and ask questions on this particular presentation. And will have to be a bit shorter and straightforward to the point, honorable members. My first person here is Honorable Piri. Honorable Piri. Honorable Piri is here and he is logged in.
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, good morning. I was trying to open up, it was not allowing me. But Chair, nevertheless, greetings to yourself as the Chair, members of Parliament and officials who are on the platform. Chair, I personally don't have much, but one will ask a question on the issue of ESCOM, because it has no much on the issue of the synopsis of SONA. On what I'm interested on is something that is close to my heart. Actually, I'm prepared for mango because I have the love of the airlines, but nevertheless, I wanted to understand, in terms of enabling or accelerating the private investment in the generation capacity, as public enterprise and ESCOM in particular, what are their plans? Because, Chair, in most of our questions, I even raised it in one of our joint PC that, normally what the president outlines is not what we are being presented in a portfolio. How does it interlink? And how sure and certain what we are being presented here and versus what the president it's presenting on SONA, the reality of the implementation, where does it lie? I really, that's why I don't have much to question, but most of my problems is that we are given SONA, and when it comes to implementation, things are not happening, are not implementable. And when you question those who are responsible, the response that we got from the outgoing or the outgone CEO was that I have nothing to do with briefing the president. And therefore you get confused because the implementer, it's ESCOM, it's the person who must deal with, or the department who must deal with oversight is DPE. So I really want to understand in terms of how will they sustain and accelerate what has been presented to SONA. Then I'll pause there. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Piri. The next is Honorable Kachalia.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. In terms of ESCOM, you say there's new funding for diesel from government. I'd like to know where that will sit. Will it sit on ESCOM's balance sheet or government's balance sheet, and how much that will be for? In terms of fixing the power stations and accelerating private investment and procuring new generation capacity, we're told simply that resources are being deployed. there's scant detail here and it's not good enough. We need to know exactly what is being done, and perhaps you need to go and think about that and come back to us on this and tell us by which date you're able to do so, because this is urgent and it dovetails with the crisis that we are sitting on at the moment. In terms of, we talk about skills being brought in to deal with this, and how does this sit against the removal of 500 recent personnel who happen to be white from the utility? I presume they have proper skills, and why have they been removed, and why are new people being brought in? How do the new skills compared to the skills that are being removed, and why is this being done? In terms of rail, previously we had only one qualified bidder. What is the progress with the new round? The roadmap speaks to the long term, and what is being done to prevent. I'd like to know what is being done to prevent Transnet from going down the Eskom route in the short term. There's, excuse me, what improvement is there any in last year, from last year in our port rankings, in terms of container handling? If you could tell us give us those stats. You say that there's overarching legislation for SOEs in terms of SOE bill and to create a state holding company. Given the performance of state intervention in the past and current initiatives to accelerate privatization and the conflict therein, what is the exact purpose of the holdco? Is it just to centralize the privatization of a company that desperately needs to be privatized, or is it to to maintain control, and then we need to know what exactly is intended? It's been 4 years since the announcement of the intention to unbundle Eskom. Given the current crisis, I'd say this is urgent. How is this going to be fast-tracked, and how much new transmission capacity is envisaged to be brought on board, and by whom, and at what cost? By when can you commit, in terms of port functioning, to giving us a progress report on what has been achieved in respect of what you say you are doing on slides 10, 11, 12, and 13? There's a lot there that is in the pipeline that is envisaged to fix things, but we need to understand at which point we can measure what has been done, because that is absolutely crucial. Measurement, without measurement, we are nothing. In terms of rail and rolling stock expansion, how much is needed in total? That is money. How much is currently on the table, and where is the balance envisaged to come from? That's the total of my questions and comments. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Kashalia. The next is Honorable Maotwe.
No, thank you, Chair, and greetings to everyone online this morning. So my first question will be, what is the understanding of the establishment of the holding company, state-owned holding company, and how will it make a difference compared to what is currently happening? And what will be the role of the department in as far as the holding company is concerned? The second question, Chair, is on the SONA, the much focus was on transmission and much less was said about generation. So what is the understanding of the department with relation to generation, and how, because you can't transmit something you have not generated or you don't have. So who is going to be generating electricity on behalf of Eskom or on behalf of DPE? that will then be transmitted according to these SONA commitments. The third one, Chair, is on the rail policy. It's clear that the roadmap is to, at some point, privatize Transnet, because this says that private Transnet and private companies must conclude partnerships. Although it might seem at this point as if it's a port terminal partnership, but we know that when Transnet came to present 2 weeks ago, they spoke about Transnet engineering in particular, and Transnet freight rail. They spoke about partnerships in transport, opening the rail network for private users. So it looks like they're eating this elephant piece by piece. Now, what is the view of the department in relation to that? Because I thought that the department's mandate was to secure the interests of the public, which is to retain the state-owned entities. But it looks like it is the same state that says, then let's privatize. Chair, I'll also talk on the unbundling of Eskom. Once again, we want to caution against unbundling, and we know that it's a government initiative now, but we still caution government to say, do not unbundle Eskom, because if you unbundle Eskom, and it's also evident in the SONA that the much focus was on transmission and distribution of something that you have not generated. That is going to mean that we're bringing private sector into Eskom, and that is now eating our own state-owned entity. Chair, the last one will be on the rail corridor from Gauteng, which is the last one. Is the private sector involved in this extension of the rail network? That's one. Two, it looks like the commitment from SONA was to say you need to increase or rather move cargo from road to rail. But here the focus is only on vehicles. And my understanding is that vehicles don't carry such a big volume if it were. So why is the focus of DPE only on this expansion of the section of this road, of this rail, that focuses only on vehicles, and less is said about moving more cargo, which is your manganese, your iron ore, your coal, your chrome, and all that, the bulk commodity. So bulk commodity has got more volumes than vehicles. I mean, we can even count how many vehicles we manufacture that to move compared to what the mines are producing. So if any rail company needs to survive, it survives on bulk commodities. That's why South Africa has got such a huge network of rail compared to any other country in the continent. It's because South Africa has got a lot of minerals, which are bulk commodities, which is the core of what you need for the rail network, rail company to survive. So why is it that the focus here is only on vehicles? Because I can tell you, it's not going to make a much of a difference. It's a drop in the ocean compared to what the bulk commodities would do. That will be all for me for now, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mawotwe. From Honorable Mawotwe, we go to Honorable Kumede. Honorable Kumede.
Thank you very much, and greetings to all members and all people on the platform. Chair, I want to sort of agree with the sentiment that's shared by Honorable Piri, that we seem to be too good on pen and paper, but very weak on the side of the implementation. I'm quite satisfied perhaps with what has been presented. The fear is, are we in a position to implement that? Especially when you hear the presenters, you'll hear that it's on progress. So on our side, Chair, I think we must begin to beef up oversight, so that we're in a position to compare what's being said in the pen and paper vis-a-vis what we may see on the ground. Chair, my interest, in fact, was on the slide 4, slide 3, and slide 4. It's where that's too critical for me, where we talk the debt sort of reduction. It's an intervention, the deployment of resources, recruit skilled personnel. The only worry that I may have, which in many sort of the presentation, we seem to lack the time frame, not unless it says within the year that presentation is done, then it's expected that will be the time frame. I'm happy as well. I think we must thank government for having taken over the debt or part of the debt. The 254 billion, in fact, it leaves ESCOM with 60 billion, I can't say to play around with, to cover the gaps that in fact were there, because they were due to be paying repayment of a debt was 118 billion. So if you take 254, which in fact is a little bit above 50%, it gives then ESCOM 60 little bit plus billion that they will use to cover some of the shortfall that they used to have. Chair, you know, this time around, as much as we may try to avoid many other things, but what's always behind us and in fact worrying us is the issue of load shedding. So we don't have the capacity perhaps to stop what's being said in the social media and all that, but ours is to then try and confirm from the side of the executive or perhaps DPE to help us see whether these things that are being said are true or not true, because they shape us in terms of getting ready for the things that may come or currently being unforeseen. There is too much that's being said about the failing or collapsing of the grid. I'm not sure if we may be assisted and be given the status, if ever there is anything of that nature, so that we begin to understand. Currently, this morning on the news, there is something that talks about the preparedness of preparing for the stage 18, which in fact, you know, when you talk stage 18, to me, it's a complete blackout. So are these things there, or we need to wait up until we are informed by perhaps the officials and we get to know of some of the things that were being said? One is happy about the support of perhaps the diesel. I know the plan that was given to us was taking us to 2025. At the time when the plan was given, only the 23 in terms of diesel, 2023 in terms of diesel was provided. I think then some remnants from the payment of the takeover of the debt will then help perhaps buy for 24 and 25. Yes, as well as if the focus is in fact on reduce the severity of load shedding, I think many of us will be happy. It gives a sort of a very big contrast when we say we want to create a job, and at the same time, on the other hand, no electricity, nothing. If we are to go the with renewals, renewable. Let's do that. Some of the moves by when the minister, the finance minister was presenting, they are good, but it depends on whether people will have money to do on all those other things that were suggested, and for the government to be in a position then to top up. So that's very critical for me, in a sense that yes, we wish to help. Please, let's try and avoid a situation where, if possible, that we could have a complete blackout. Chair, because of time, may I then deal with the ESCOM only, the other matter on Transnet. I hope colleagues will then help me then deal with that. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kumede. And then we go to Honorable Buthelezi is not here. Honorable Kwankwa is not here. We go to Honorable Mkwanazi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to everyone. Chairperson, I've been fairly covered by my colleagues, but I want to follow up on what Honorable Piri started on the SONA commitments and the issue of the implementation. Honorable Chairperson, I will love if the report from the DPE can also talk to the timelines of implementation, so that we can be able to make follow-ups and make monitoring on those issues, because they just said it's in progress. It is progress, and the next thing you'll also get the same report with the same status of progress. Maybe if they can really log each and every item on the timelines, so that we can monitor that. Secondly, Chair, I want to check from DPE on their capacity to play the oversight and to play their mandate over the SOEs, and their capacity to support the SOEs on delivering on its mandate. Because, Chair, when you look at all the SOEs, you find that we are being reported if issues has been in the crisis stage. So you can't trace it back to say what is the role of DPE in maybe in risk management, whether in consequence management, maybe in avoiding whatever that can happen to the SOEs, and giving support to the SOEs. Then from that report of SONA, maybe if they can talk around their support, their capacity to support and monitor. And also the issue to ring fence power station that will contribute in reducing the load shedding. I haven't had the report of talking on the program towards that, and also on the timelines to say when can we see that happening or implemented on the ground. Thank you so much, Chair. I've been fairly covered on the other issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kwanazi. Honorable Isaac.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues. Chairperson, I'll be brief. The action regarding, in tackling the economic sabotage, which obviously there's been a lot of discussion around. There was the report where or rather it was mentioned that some 20 hotspots were identified regarding this specific economic sabotage. I haven't seen a report back or heard anything in terms of what has been achieved thus far in terms of these hotspots regarding these sabotages that have been taking place. So perhaps an update on that would be welcome. Of course, this is just a statement that Eskom loses millions due to production losses. But what I would like to move on to is Transnet, in that I know it spends some 1.5 billion rand on security annually. Yet, Chairperson, its revenue losses have increased dramatically. So, I'd like to hear something more in detail about what is being done urgently to mitigate this spend of 1.5 billion, where we're not seeming to get any return on our investment. Then, of course, the issue of the lack of technical skills and project management. What urgent plan is now being implemented regarding this? And the other points, Chairperson, lots has been said about. I'm not going to be repetitive. Last thing, Chairperson, I'd just like to comment on with regards to Denel. Now, in SONA 2023, nothing, in fact, was said about Denel. I recall that in the MTBPS, it was mentioned that the entity would be allocated 204 million rand to reduce its contingent liabilities. I then also recall that a further allocation of 3.4 billion rand was allocated to assist with Denel's turnaround plan. And I think the committee will recall that discussion. I'm not hearing anything much on this either. So perhaps some form of report on that issue of Denel will also be somewhat appreciated. Chairperson, I'll stop there for now. Thank you again.
Thank you, Honorable Isaac. Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Dlamini.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, colleagues. I think mine is going to be very short and simple. One would be to maybe ask, all these plans that are being presented, where have they been benchmarked? So that we're able to reference as well to see how it worked. And the contextual factors, if they were the same. I'm asking this because South Africa is largely rural, and most people can't afford to pay for electricity, which is why you find that a government from time to time will have to take over some of the debt. Now, at the rate we are going to have a situation where Eskom charges unaffordable fees for electricity, and most people will be disconnected. You might even find, Chair, that if you were to hypothetically disconnect everyone that's not paying, we wouldn't have load shedding. It then means you have a peculiar situation as a country. So I just want to ask that. Two, on Transnet, we've been talking moving from road to rail for years, but we are not discussing the impediments to such a move, because by and large, that decision will have to be supported by the logistics companies that are actually moving cargo. Now, our rail network, as far as I've been made to understand with my discussion in Transnet, is that it's full of what may be termed potholes, and it's going to take a bit of investment to fix that, over and above the signaling problems and whatnot. Now, understanding now that we want to say the private sector is going to foot that bill, what sort of impact will it have on the cost now of moving goods by rail? Because Remember, the private sector will have to recover their costs as well. Now, I'll make an example. Even if you bring in the private sector tomorrow, it will still be faster to move cargo by road from Johannesburg to Durban than it would by train, because the train can actually take anything upwards of 36 hours when a truck can be there in 8-10 hours. So how is this going to work? That's what I'm trying to get at. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Komani, do we have Honorable Komani here? Apparently, she's not here. Okay. The last person will be Honorable Chabalala. Honorable Chabalala. What happened to Honorable Chabalala is on this year. Honorable Chabalala. Honorable Chabalala. Honorable members, I think we've got a problem with Honorable Chabalala. Let's go to the department to respond. I will suggest that by 11, you must have covered almost all your responses. I'm not sure how you're going to do it, but let's try. Let's try. Acting DG?
Thanks, Chair. We'll try to cover all the questions that have been asked by the honorable members, and I will also probably, for the sake of time, I'll ask Donald to cover the energy ones and Ivandra, and then I'll cover some and Advocate Makobe on the SOE bill. And just to respond quickly on some of the issues, in terms of the question that was asked by Honorable Piri around private sector investment, what are we referring to regarding this? We are referring to the IPPs that we're talking about accelerating private investment that needs to be connected. And the other question was, where does the implementation lie? In terms of the IPPs, in terms of the processes, the DMRE through the IPP office does the procurement. And in terms of the implementation of connecting those IPPs to the grid, it is what ESCOM needs to do. And the question was also being asked as to how then do we make sure that all these things work together and they're being fast-tracked. And I just wish to respond by indicating that there's the National Energy Crisis Committee that has been convened by the DG and the presidency, where all stakeholders and departments and the colleagues from government, the whole of government, convene to deal with these issues, to deal with any bottlenecks and challenges that may be there, because the whole idea and intention, it is to really cut through the red tape and move towards what we call the smart tape, and actually condense or even shorten the time frame of getting approvals in place, and also to have a one-stop shop. So the presidency is convening us, and we are part of that, to make sure that any bottlenecks, to making sure that the necessary megawatts that are needed to deal with the issue of the electricity crisis are being dealt at the very highest level, making sure that all relevant stakeholders are part of that. And on the issue that was asked by Honorable Kachalia in terms of funding for diesel, I just need to indicate that We have pressed Eskom. They've looked at the internal cash flows to secure some of the diesel to fund for it. And the other National Treasury indicated that they will provide the guarantees for them to be able to raise funding to the tune of between 4 and 5 billion in that regard, to make sure that the entity secures the necessary diesel to power some of the OCGTs in order for them to be able to deal with the elevated levels of load shedding. So that is what is being done. And also around the whole issue of skills. What we have ascertained is that at the different power stations, there is the issue of skills that needs to be looked at, whereby we need to augment the current skill capacity, because it was also established that the experience that in terms of running power stations, it's very important. You actually need a number of years. For example, if you've been a power station manager, you probably need years to understand how a turbine would sound vis-a-vis somebody who's just out and just like having a few years of experience. So they are bringing, I would say, quote unquote, experienced hands from externally and to augment the current skills there. On the shareholder management bill, the whole idea there is to make, the question was also asked by Honorable Kachalia, that the whole purpose of having a whole code, it is basically to streamline and standardize and have a coordinated way of having oversight over these entities. And as we alluded, the whole objective is that we need to be separating policy, shareholding, and also regulation. So this will ensure that there's effective oversight in terms of pronouncing this and to bring efficiency and accountability around this one. And around, I take the point in terms of being, probably I'll ask Advocate Makobe to probably, when he comes in, he can elaborate further on this particular issue. I'm just, quickly trying to, around the issue of the debt reduction, I think it was also asked around what is being done there. As the colleagues know, that the Minister of Finance did announce the 254 billion debt takeover. I need to indicate that DPE and National Treasury are in fact engaging very closely with National Treasury to make sure that this is being effected, and we are currently working on the conditions that will be attached to the debt takeover. And I just also need to indicate, I think this question was asked by Honorable Gomede, in terms of how we're dealing with the issue of load shedding. We are looking at various initiatives to make sure that we minimize the impact thereof. We are looking at procuring even additional megawatts from the South African power pool in terms of bringing additional megawatts. I can't, in terms of, we are not talking about the collapsing of the grid. We just basically, at this point, I haven't seen that. I cannot comment on that. But what I know is that we are engaging with Eskom to make sure that we minimize the impact of load shedding. I know that in the past, we've seen very elevated levels of load shedding being at stage 6, but it's now, we're monitoring that very closely. And we're also looking at other initiatives in terms of even looking at the demand side management, whereby we begin to resuscitate that campaign that was being done in the past. Around the other issue, in terms of timeframes, I take what Honorable Mkhwanazi indicated, that we need to provide timeframes and give the committee, we shall do so. And around the issue of capacity, to have capacity within DPE, we do need to indicate that we are beginning to bring capacity in terms of the department, and we are making sure that we fill the necessary vacancies to be able to perform our role and oversight mandate in terms of overseeing that these SOCs deliver on their mandate. And we are really at work in terms of making sure that critical vacancies, especially at the SMS levels, those are being filled. The issue of the priority power stations, this is also the work that we also monitor very closely. As I indicated, there's a subcommittee of the board of Eskom that is looking at the big power stations that are not giving the desired megawatts, and they're prioritizing these to make sure that they're being remedied. There's a recovery plan that we're working closely with and making sure that that happens. Mr. Ishmael indicated around the issue of the economic sabotage. I just need to indicate that we are also part of that work stream that reports to the presidency in terms of economic sabotage, specifically referring to the Eskom and Transnet, what is happening there, especially around cable theft, and we monitor these, and we trying to have a whole of state approach. And even in the power stations, I need to remind the colleagues that there's some SNDF personnel that have been deployed to the hotspots or the identified power stations. So we are definitely working as a whole of state, because as Eskom alone or as DP alone, in terms of dealing with economic sabotage, it needs the might of the state. And also we have seen also in the last few months that some coal yards have been identified by the SAPS, and there's a number of arrests and dockets that we've seen whereby the coal yard is being swapped with stones, etc. So we are beginning to work very closely with the SAPS and many law enforcement agencies to combat this issue, because it's obviously having a negative impact on the economy. On the issue of Denel, the reason why we did not touch it on this particular one, we're focusing on the responses on the SONA address, but just to indicate to the colleagues in terms of the Denel, yes, it's correct. National Treasury did give Denel make some allocation for the turnaround plan. We are working with National Treasury to make sure that the turnaround plan is indeed implemented, and we will be working with them to make sure that the necessary conditions that will make sure that the money gets transferred, to make sure that indeed they do or the funds are being channeled to the turnaround and the implementation of Denel. So that work is ongoing with with the colleagues at National Treasury. And we are also, as well, we touched on the issue of the debt takeover. Even on that one, we are working very closely with National Treasury to attach a set of conditions around the debt takeover, because we just don't want to give, just take over the debt without any conditions that we need to hold our colleagues accountable. Can I probably ask, in the interest of time, Donald can add wherever I've left out on the energy part, followed by the responses to the questions, some of whichever that I've left out, to Evandra and Melanchthon, and those that have not been adequately addressed, then we can respond to them formally in writing. If the chair so allows, can I hand over to Donald to address some of the questions that I might have left out? Thanks.
Right, thanks, ADG. I'm going to touch base on, I think the question that was asked is with regard to fast-tracking the restructuring. As honorable members are aware, that the roadmap envisaged that we were going to start with the transmission, and a significant progress was made under transmission, which culminated in the subsidiary being incorporated in 2021. But now, for it to be operational, there are issues which are outstanding, which are external issues outside of the entity itself. One, there is a need to finalize a license by NERSA. The application was sent to NERSA in November last year. And NERSA they have published a consultation, they've issued a consultation notice to start consulting with regard to the issuing of that license. The second one is that you need lenders' consent with regard to restructuring, and the lenders indicated that they were waiting for a clear indication from Minister of Finance with regard to the debt quantum that will be taken from Eskom. So at the moment, Eskom is awaiting feedback from lenders after the announcement of the debt relief quantum. So the process is ongoing. The lenders are going through their credit committees, and they will negotiate once a decision is made. But I must just highlight the fact that they had another concern that they would prefer to issue their concern for all for the entire restructuring, as opposed to a concern with regard to a specific subsidiary. Like in this case, transmission was the first one to be the subsidiary to be created. The work is underway with regard to distribution. As you are aware that there's a PFMA that is required from both Minister of DPE and Minister of Finance with regard to the establishment of the distribution company. So Minister is considering the PFMA now for the incorporation of that subsidiary, but already Eskom has completed the necessary required work with regard to the securing the registration of a company, a distribution company with the register of companies. And with regard to generation, the way in which this restructuring is happening, as you are aware, that Eskom, everything was under one integrated Eskom. So what happens is that with this restructuring, transmission subsidiary was created, the distribution subsidiary is created, that now leaves generation on its own. And the legal opinion that was obtained was that the fact that now you took out both transmission and distribution, and then you leave out generation, there is no need to incorporate generation. Automatically, the generation now becomes a subsidiary. What is required now is the establishment of a holding company, and that Eskom has done a significant work on that part. A due diligence was completed. So the process now is they have taken the due diligence to their board, which now the board needs to endorse and approve. Once the board approves that is when now they will send an application, the PFMA application for the establishment of a holding company to both DPE and Minister of Finance. So in a nutshell, it's ongoing work. You will see that as planned or as per the roadmap, the transmission is the one that will be operational before others, and that it will be followed by distribution and then the generation. So what are we doing to accelerate that? We have a intergovernmental steering committee, which is chaired by DPE DG, and it comprised of the DG of National Treasury, the DG of DMRE, and the GCE, or the Chief Executive of Eskom. We meet on monthly basis to provide update with regard to the work of unbundling. So the steering committee, the DGs and the GCE, they provide oversight over that work. So apart from that, we have 3 work streams that are working on the restructuring itself. We have a funding, the financial work stream, which is led by National Treasury. Among other, what they were doing is the debt relief. And then we have the legal work stream, which is led by DPE. It looks at all the legal requirements for the restructuring. And then we have a policy work stream, which is led by DMRE. And what they were doing there is they are looking at the amendment of the policy with regard to the Electricity Regulation Act, which went to cluster last month, and then now it will be going to cabinet. And again, they are looking at the electricity pricing policy, which now is on the consultation phase. That work now they have taken it to NEDLEC. So in a nutshell, it's ongoing work. There are engagement between among the work stream, which reports to the Intergovernmental Steering Committee, which is led by the DGs of the 3 departments, and the GCE to provide update with regard to the restructuring work. So I'll stop there. I think ADG, you have covered all of the question. Other than that, if there's any other question that was left out, maybe like you indicated, it can be raised, or we can respond to it in writing. Thank you.
Can I ask Ivandra to respond on the Transnet issues? Be mindful of time, as the chair indicated that by 11 we should be done in terms of dealing with this issue. Ivandra, come in.
Thank you, DG. Members, I'll try and be brief. It was a lot of questions, but I think on the progress on the new round of slot applications, I think the difficulty that Transnet had with the first round is the enabling legislative and regulatory environment was not in place, and hence there could not be a commitment to long-term agreements, which then sort of compromised the attractiveness of the offer to the private sector. What is being done at this point now is work through the interim economic regulatory capacity process to try and put the bare minimum of a regulatory environment in place for third-party access, but at the same time to look at how a third-party rolling stock company can be established so that there would be a ready market for rolling stock available for companies that want to start buying slots on the network. So that progress is underway, and we are working quite closely with the Department of Transport to establish that. On the port rankings, as far as I know, there hasn't been an update since the 2021, I think it was 2021 May, where the last set of rankings have come out. But Transnet National Ports Authority does have a fairly detailed operational monitoring system. I mean, they call it TOPS. And TOPS then tracks operational performance across all of the terminals within the port system to look at which way the trends are going, whether productivity is going up, down, whether ships are waiting too long, or whether that has improved. And we are seeing some stabilization. There's still challenges in certain of the specific terminals, but in the main, it looks like the operational performance is improving. But I'm sure we'll get the new port rankings out from the World Bank fairly soon. On the rail policy and the roadmap, it's a difficult one, because we're trying to, at the same time as we deal with the rail policy, also look at how we can start reorienting Transnet to start looking at supply chains as well as looking at the modes. So while you're looking at how do I fix rail, you also need to look at how do I fix the coal supply chain, how do I fix the ore supply chain, etc. And so if you look at where the effort is being made in the short term, we know we've got several large industrial supply chains that are quite dependent on rail, so export coal, ore, manganese, etc. And there are processes that Transnet has engaged in with the Minerals Council now. And they've got teams that are established per corridor to look at specific issues in those corridors and how performance can be improved in the short term. At the same time, there's a lot of work being done to bring locomotives into the system. That's one of the binding constraints. And on the rail network side, similarly, we're looking at where the priority corridors are so that we can target the limited capital into those priority corridors. There is a shortfall in the amount of money required to restore the infrastructure backlog fully. And one of the big things in the rail policy is to secure additional funding from government to try and eliminate the rail infrastructure backlog. I think on the corridor from Gauteng to Nuga, I think the honorable member is right that corridor is not just for automotives. It will serve a lot of cargo. And that's why when we talk about the project, we split out issues of rolling stock versus issues of infrastructure. And what we are trying to do is accelerate the infrastructure component of the project, because that would provide capacity for autos, but also for bulk commodities as well. And yeah, so I think on the road to rail, so basically what Transnet is doing there is it's talking to industry now to say, we understand that rail is only part of the supply chain, and customers are actually looking for an end-to-end solution. So can we get together and see what the different partners can do within the supply chain to help move that cargo to rail? So Honorable Lamini made the point that even if the private sector had to come in today, the road is still going to be faster. The road will be faster, but rail's main competitive advantage is price. So you can move those goods a lot cheaper on rail. And even if you are slower, if you can get a level of predictability that allows customers to plan, then often that price benefit on the rail side would offset the speed benefit you get from the road side. So we are working with the private sector, other logistics players, to say, how do we get rail to insert itself into these supply chains now? And ultimately it comes down to the ability to provide an efficient, reliable, cost-effective rail service. I think, DG, I have covered most of it, but if there's things that we have missed out, we're happy to submit a written response to the committee. Thank you.
Are you done, acting DG? Acting digital. Yes.
Chair?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I missed, I had connectivity issues. Can you just repeat that, Chair?
Asking
Apologies.
if I'm done. Are you done?
Yes, we're done with the first deck of slides. If the Chair so allows, we can move to the second deck of slides unless we want clarity on the questions that have been raised on the first round.
We are going to Mango now.
Can I then ask then, Chair, through you, that Advocate Makobe comes in and present on the Mango one? Thank you, Chair. Advocate Makobe.
Thank you, ADG, and thank you to the chair and the honorable members. Can I ask you, Lebo, to just project the presentation? Lebo? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, DDG. Is it showing?
Okay. All right, yes, showing. Can we just go to the table of contents? Yeah, we'll look at the update on the business rescue process of Mango. We will look at the background, the business rescue plan and its adoption, the timeline for the business rescue process. We'll then look at the process for bringing in an investor in Mango, how far that process is. We will then look at the Section 54 application that was submitted to the department and the progress thereof. We will then look at the funding that has been allocated and dispensed to Mango, and then we'll look at the next steps. Mango was placed in what is called a voluntary business rescue process on the 28th of July, 2021, and Mr. Siposono was then appointed as a business rescue practitioner on the 2nd of August, 2021. For any business rescue process, which is a restructuring process, to be successful, there has to be funds that are allocated for that process. And an amount of 819 million was allocated to Mango for its restructuring in terms of the Special Appropriations Act. And I think at this stage it's important to indicate that such a dispensing of money to Mango was done under strict controls in terms of what that money can be spent on. So we had strict control measures in terms of the money that we're transferring to SAA to give to Mango. The business rescue plan was developed by the business rescue practitioners in terms of the provisions of the Companies Act, and that plan was published on the 29th of October 2021. And that plan indicated that there is a planned resumption of operations in December 2021 with a reduced fleet, of course, and a reduced staff complement at that time from 708 to 412 and eventually to 0. But however, a meeting of creditors was held on the 15th of November 2021, where the creditors would then consider the business rescue plan. But SAA proposed an adjournment in that meeting so that the business rescue plan be amended to exclude the resumption of operations, as the proposal was that the operations must resume on December 2021. But the proposal by SAA was that the resumption of operation must happen when an investor comes on board, because that investor must then put in the necessary capital injection. Then the SAA motion was then placed before the meeting of the creditors, and the business rescue plan was amended, and the amended plan was adopted by the creditors on the 2nd of December 2021. Then the amendment meant that the staff will not be required for a longer period because the resumption of operation was not going to happen at that stage. So as a result, the combination of the VSP process and a Section 189 retrenchment process was implemented to effectively terminate all the employment contracts. So as we stand now, there's no employees, all have been terminated. So what are the salient features let's move to the next slide, of this amended business rescue plan that has been adopted by the creditors. The plan anticipates that the business rescue practitioner will then look for an investor in Mango, which process the BR practitioner has undertaken, and the details of that process will be presented in the slides that are coming. I had indicated that the resumption of operations will happen once an investor comes on board. With regard to the aircraft leases, all the leases were cancelled and aircrafts were returned to the lessors. And the investor, once the investor comes in, the investor will then make his own arrangements in terms of the aircraft leases. With regard to the business plan, it is anticipated that 5 to 8 aircraft could be leased to relaunch operations. I'll talk about the issue of the business plan at the later slides as well. As I indicated, with regard to the employees, the employment contracts of all the employees have been terminated, and then the investor will then have to bring the employees, the new employees. With regard to the customers, the investor will then have to issue the vouchers for the value of the tickets that were purchased at that stage. The business rescue plan provides that in case the investor is not found, then Mango will be one down. We can just stay in that slide. And if it is one down, the customers will then be treated as concurrent creditors and receive the dividend in line with the rankings in terms of the Insolvency Act provisions. With regard to the creditors, there's an amount of 2.8 billion that is owed to them, owed to the creditors. But in business rescue, you negotiate what amounts that needs to be paid to the creditors, and I think an amount of 228 million will be paid to the creditors and has been set aside for that purpose. With regard to the licenses have lapsed, they've not been renewed. But once an investor comes in, those can then be applied for from the relevant authorities. Now, the next slide is the business rescue timeline. I think most of the issues I've covered before, and I'll cover later in the presentation. So we can move from this slide and move to the slide of the progress update with regard to bringing in an investor. The business rescue practitioners then send an expression of interest for people who are interested in taking shareholding in Mango. But initially, most of the expressions of interest were deficient because there was no proof of funding. There are many people who are interested in buying, airlines or investing, but they don't really have the financial muscles to be able to do that. But however, 6 preliminary bidders qualified to move to the next phase of the process, and an additional unsolicited bids were also entertained. So even when we have advertised, even as the transaction proceeds, because these kinds of transactions are live transactions, and there will be some unsolicited bids that will come into the process, and those are also entertained so that you make sure that you get the best value for the product. And then there was the binding offers that were required, but this process took long, as I indicated, that most bidders struggled to secure funding. They had an interest, but they could not produce the proof of funding. There was a virtual data room that was set up, and all the bidders were provided access to that so that they can do their own due diligence, of course, subject to the signing of the non-disclosure agreement. And management also made presentations in that regard. I'll talk to later in terms of the due diligence that had required the business rescue practitioner to make, and which we are not happy with what has been done in that regard. Draft agreements were also prepared and shared with those that were selected bidders so that they can then get the comments from their legal counsel, and that process then proceeded. But in terms of Section 54 of the PFMA, before this transaction can take place for the sale of shares of Mango, the minister must then give the necessary approval in terms of the PFMA. And an application was then submitted to the department. I'll go into the detail in the next slide in terms of that application and the concerns that we had. We actually requested additional information from SAA so that we can get that from the BRP, but that information is still outstanding from the business rescue practitioner. And the business rescue practitioner has taken the minister to court, effectively asking for a declaratory order that it be assumed that the minister has approved the transaction, or alternatively directing the minister to make a decision in terms of this application. And I think I must indicate and clarify that the minister is not refusing to take a decision on this matter or on this PFMA application, but the minister is asking for additional information. And the minister is entitled, as the shareholder representative, to ask for information so that when he makes a decision, he has all the information that is required. But instead of submitting that information to the minister, which he has requested, you'll see in the next slide, on 2 occasions, that information has not yet been submitted to the minister to date. But the business rescue practitioner has then gone to court to make an application to force the minister to approve the application, whereas he has not given the minister the information that the minister has requested. Once the minister has all the information that he requires, then he will make a decision in terms of this PFMA application. We are still waiting for that information. Now, with the issue of once that PFMA has been completed, then the Air Service and Licensing Council will then be approached for change of ownership, and the matter will then go to the Competition Commission. If we move to the Section 54 application, because it has been a topical matter, and I think we should then speak on it in detail. On the 30th of September 2022, the department received a PFMA application from SAA for the disposal of SAA shares in Mango. So that application will come through the SAA board because the SAA is the shareholder to Mango, but that application must be approved by the minister as the executive authority. Now, on both the 26th of October 2022 and the 21st of December 2022, the minister requested, as is entitled to, I must mention, in terms of the PFMA, but also in terms of the significance and materiality framework, which is a framework that governs Section 54 application, that the minister must get all the information that is required. So that information was requested, and as I indicated, that information is not forthcoming. The information that was requested by the minister includes the business case of the preferred bidder. The department needs to have the side of that business plan so that we can satisfy ourselves that the proposal that the consortium is putting on the table is viable, it makes commercial sense, and that the investor has the adequate working capital to be able to operate the airline, and that the proposal that is put on the table, as I said, is viable. But as I said, the BRP is not willing to give us that business case. We have also requested that a comprehensive due diligence be undertaken so that the department and the minister are satisfied that the preferred bidder, has the appropriate working capital and that all the checks have been done. And we're still waiting for that comprehensive due diligence, and the BRP has not given us a comprehensive one. We also requested information relating to the foreign ownership of the investor so that the department can have comfort that the disposal transaction complies with the laws of South Africa relating to foreign ownership of companies, as that in terms of our law. But the BRP indicated that the request for further information is spurious and is a strategy of a minister to avoid taking a decision on the application, which is not true. The minister wants further information. And once this further information is furnished, the minister will be able to take a decision in this regard. If we move to the next slide, as I indicated, government has invested a lot of money in Mango as part of the restructuring process. And I think we are duty bound to be able to make an assessment and make sure that we've got value for money, to make sure that the investor can be able to run this airline and continue it and it being a viable airline. The BRP has had concern about the sharing of the business plan because that investor and SAA will be in the aviation market. And we said we can have an arrangement where that business plan can then be given to the shareholder to ensure that there's no conflict of interest. And if there is any concerns with the issue of the Competition Act and the breaching of that act, we can also get an advisory opinion from the Competition Commission. But then we have a business rescue practitioner who's not cooperating with us so that we can come to some sort of an arrangement. We are waiting for all that information, and once that information comes, the minister will then make the necessary decision in that. With regard to the funding that has been allocated to Mango, an amount of 819 million was allocated for the structuring of Mango, and the funds were advanced in tranches between August 2021 and May 2022. As I had indicated, we have put stringent conditions on what those funds must be used for, because at the end of the day, this is taxpayers' money, and we have to make sure that they are used appropriately. And the final tranche of 225 million was transferred to the BRP in May 2022. We had actually spoken to the BRP and said, we need a savings for the fiscals. The creditors must also, get a pinch. They must also contribute. And we had an arrangement. He took that matter to the creditors, and the creditors agreed that an amount of 85 million must be withheld, and that money will be then taken to the national fiscals so that we can really save some money that can go to the National Revenue Fund. With regard to the next steps, the issues now is the PFM approval. The BRP has taken the minister to court, and we are defending that litigation. And in that regard, because the minister is entitled to that information, and the matter is before the courts. But while the matter is before the courts, we are still waiting for that information. And if that information comes, then a decision will be made on this investor. And once that approvals have been made in terms of the PFMA, then it goes to, as I said earlier, to the regulatory approvals, which is the Air Services Licensing Council and the Competition Commission. After which then the claims will be settled, and in line with the provisions of the Companies Act, then the business rescue plan will be substantially implemented. Thank you, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you, DDG. Honorable members, that is the presentation on business to rescue of Mango. I will again go through the list, but not the same as before. I will make some changes that we should start now. But I think Piri will be starting again, since she was already mentioned that she is already have question in relation to the Mango matter. Can we start with Piri?
Thanks, Chair. I really appreciate that consistency. Chair, as the department has already alluded that they've received a PFMA application from the SAA for the disposal of Mango shares in the airline, which indicate that South African Airways was completely dissatisfied with the preferred bidder for Mango. However, the department has requested key information to properly assess the transaction and decided on the application. Unfortunately, the BRP took the department to court, as he has already indicated. But my question is that, considering this, what are the cost implications of this litigation on the overall business rescue process? That is my first question. Secondly, one of the key information sought by the minister for the assessment of the PFMA application on the disposal of shares in Mango by SAA is the business case, as they've already said, so that the department can have sight to the detailed business plan to satisfy itself that the consortium proposal is viable and they have adequate working capital to operate the airline. and that the accusation proposal is viable. My question will be, did the department recommend that this information should be part of the amendment BR plan? And why the adequate working capital of the preferred bidder important, since the exit of the airline in the South African market is common and can be attributed to the other factors aside from financial constraints. As I go further, Chair, bear with me. The other one that I'll go quickly because I sense you're going to stop me. What are the assessments done prior to the disposal of government shares in SAA? In this case, what value for money did the government attain in disposing its shares in the SAA? Lastly, I want to check with them, how does the sharing of the business plan by the preferred bidder not constitute a conflict of interest, as the preferred bidder is the potential rival to the department by virtue of overseeing government shares in the SAA. In this regard, for the business plan by the department done in line with the Competition Act number 89 of 1998. Chair, lastly, I want to check because already we are aware that ISC has cancelled Mango's operating license. If this is unable to be resolved, how will this affect the business rescue process going forward? Let me pause there. If I will have a second bite, I'll come back, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Piri. Honorable Kachalia.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I have a number of questions. I'll just go through them. Can we understand who the preferred bidder is? Can we understand how much the preferred bidder is prepared to pay? To amplify Honorable Piri's question, will the preferred bidder still buy it if the IASC doesn't reinstate the license? Then what's the cash balance of Mango currently? Where's the 85 million rand balance of the 872 that not paid to Mango? 282 million was set aside to be paid to creditors who are owed 2.8 billion. What if your negotiations are to pay this are not successful, and what's the impact of that on business rescue? Are any of the aircraft owned by Mango? You say all leases have been cancelled and 5 to 8 may well be leased in the future. When, I'd like to know. And finally, what fees have been paid to the business rescue practitioners? Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Kachalia, thank you. Honorable Mawatwe. Honorable Mawatwe. Honorable Mawatwe, are you still here? Seemingly, Honorable Mawatwe is no longer pictured here on the list. Okay, let's leave her. And we go to Honorable Buthelezi is not here. Honorable Kwankwa is not here. Then let's go to Honorable Kumede.
Chair is not here.
Okay.
Chair, thanks very much for the second bite. It is just my observation, Chair Uguti. We seem to be internally creating a competition between Mango and SAA. I'm saying many of the things that seem to be crippling Mango are the things that are suggested by SAA. Many of us will remember that some time back before the proposal that some other items be deferred for Mango. Those were suggested by SAA. In fact, even the suspension for 24 months of the license, the reduction of airlines, all that in fact came from SAA, but in a form of a board. It looks as if Mango is accountable or still accountable. It makes me then ask a question that currently with the new situation, is Mango still a subsidiary of SAA? Because it looks as if now they are still to report, but they seem to have followed a similar pattern of the route, that one of business rescue. Chair, that's that. One other thing I may be interested to know is our lead time. I'm worried now that it talks about the 24 months suspension. That when is this 24 months started? Because I was interested to know as to when is the leading time for Mango to take to the skies. Yes, there was a question on court, which in fact I'm not sure whether DPE will have in fact this thing, which in fact is not understandable, where we pay a person but that person is not accountable to us. And yes, I understand perhaps the court wanted a kind of a neutral position, because if a person is employed by us and we go to him to lead this, we may have an influence on him. Getting an independent person is fine, but worse than if that person is being paid by us. The issue of costs has been asked, but I'm interested to know what could be the implication should the department lose the case. What's going to happen? Because it looks as if we only look at the positive and the cost and what. Anything in this world is just possible. One other question that I wanted to ask is, in the process, do we have, whether the BRP, will they have enough to carry them through perhaps the process? Because it looks as if, I'm not sure if it delays much. I'm not sure whether there is anything happening at this stage. Now they'll be dictated to by the court. Since the practitioner is no longer willing to submit the information that in fact is requested by the shareholder, which I've got a feeling that it's very unfair. It looks as if he has not even prepared that information to be submitted. He is just awaiting the court decision if the court decision favors the DPE, then he will start. And then there is more time that's being added. But anyway, thank you very much for the initiative. I think we'll be happy if Mango comes back. We understand the 708 people, there were too many to be laid off. Will the department consider recalling part of them, those in fact that will be or still unable to secure jobs anywhere else? If they are still there, coming back with their skills, that will be fine, and it will make the situation a little bit faster. So let me help the chair. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kumede. I know that Honorable Therese and Kwang were not there. We will have to rush to Honorable Mkwanazi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I've been fairly covered by Honorable Piri and Honorable Kumete, especially on the cancellation of a license, the progress on operating. But I also want to get the progress information regarding the local content or on the deal. And also, Chair, the DDG did indicate the issue of staff and operation. Maybe if I was also covered by Honorable Kumete on the staff and the future of the staff going forward. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mkwanazi. Honorable Isaac.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, yeah, almost everything has been covered across the board by my colleagues. Honorable Kachalia covered the issue on the preferred bidder, the PFMA issue was covered. The issue on the staff was touched on. I just want to very simply find out, is Mango currently paying any staff? I'd just like to know that. The issue on the license, yes, again, that was touched on. Just very simply, I'd like to know, is Mango's license now officially cancelled and now pending an appeal? Just so that I understand exactly what is transpiring with the license. That's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Isaac. Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Dlamini. Zizi. Last time I checked, Honorable Dlamini was here. Honorable Dlamini is not here. Then let's go to Honorable Komani, who I also don't see here. And Awadwa is not back here. And let's go to Honorable Chabalala. Honorable Chabalala is not here also.
Chair, I'm here. Sorry about that. I was struggling to unmute myself. Let me greet everybody in the meeting. Welcome the presentation. Firstly, I want to understand the business rescue practitioners, Mr. Magobe. Do we have a sense as to how much we're likely to be, because they've taken us to court or the department rather, how much are we likely to be spending on those costs? What are the areas of, if any, of you settling that out of court if possible? And how much are they still going to require from the department to implement or to do the turnaround, what do you call it, the restructuring? Because they're taking you to court. You get into, when they come out of court again, it's the department again that must give them money again to do this thing. Which brings me to the point that I've been constantly saying, and I hope the committee section will also ensure, even within the minutes, this is covered. One has been raising the issue of business rescue practitioners around, one, the matters of accountability financially, the matter of them having funds from an entity, if not the department. However, they are not, the department cannot rather take them on, meaning they can't receive accountability records insofar expenditure is concerned. So they're not liable to do that with them. So my point I've always been raising is that we need to have a joint meeting with the Department of Trade and Industry and deal with the issue in the Companies Act. So I hope that will also be taken on board moving forward, because there's too much money we're spending on business rescue practitioners. Our lesson learned from the SAA process was a very painful one. There's lots of money. At the end of the day, if you check the expenditures when they went to SCOPA, it was more about paying what do you call consultants to do the work, but at the end of the day, we never really had a plan from them. So I find it very disturbing. So if I can just be assisted by the committee section as well, needs to package this and put it properly, especially perhaps looking into the legal framework of it and the legislation of it, so that we are very clear with the DTI exactly what is it that we seek to really correct. On the 30th of September, Department received a PFMA application, obviously, from SAA for the disposal of SAA shares in Mango Airlines, which indicated that SAA was completely satisfied with the preferred bidder for Mango. However, the department has requested key information to properly assess the transaction and decide on the application. Now, unfortunately, the BRP took the department to court over this matter. So considering this, what are the cost implications of this litigation on the overall business rescue process? Now you get my question. Now, on key information that has been sought by the Minister for the assessment of the PFMA application on the disposal of shares in Mango, by SAA in the business case of the preferred bidder, so that the department can have sight of the detailed business plan to satisfy itself that the consortium's proposal is viable and they have adequate working capital to operate the airline, and that the acquisition proposal is viable. The question is, did the department recommend that this information should be part of the amended business rescue plan? And why is the adequate working capital of the preferred bidder important, since the exit of the airlines in the South African market is common and can be attributable to other factors aside from financial constraints? I also want to know what was any assessment done prior to the disposal of government shares in SAA? If this is the case, what value for money did the government attain in disposing its shares in SAA? The last question would be from my side, from where I'm seated, is that the department is concerned that the BRP seeks approval of the transaction without undertaking comprehensive due diligence. Considering this, what aspect of the transaction does the department want to further verify, investigate, and audit, if we can be also answered around this thing? So let me leave it with that. But as I said, my first point, the request for the business plan by the department done in line with the Competition Act 89 of 1998. So I need to understand, have you done that business plan by the department, whether was it in line with the Competitions Act? Let me leave it at that, Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Chabalala. Can we, honorable members, go back to the DG? Acting DG?
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I ask Advocate Makwaba to respond to the questions? I think the honorable members, they've raised very pertinent questions. And without further ado, let me hand over to Advocate Makwaba to respond to those questions. Advocate Makwaba?
Thank you, ADG. I will respond to some of the questions, and then Edwin will then come in and also respond to some of the questions, especially on the finances and the licensing. Honorable Piri, and I think it's a matter that Honorable Chabalala is also raised. How much is the litigation? The litigation process is by its nature quite an expensive process. And I think what makes it worse is that the business rescue practitioner is using the funds of Mango to initiate this litigation. On a matter that, you know, we could have had a meeting and settled, but is not willing to do that with us. You have asked Honorable Chabalala whether there are any prospect of settling this. We are willing to sit down with him once more and explain to him the importance of the information that we require from him. And then if he gives us that information and then we are able to make a decision, there's no need for this court case. So if he's willing to sit down with us, we will explore that settlement. It's quite an expensive process, as I said. It depends on the fees of counsel. We can't quantify it at this stage, but it can run into millions of rand, money that Mango cannot afford to lose at this stage. The second issue that Honorable Piri has raised is the issue of the business plan. Why was that not raised when the BR plan was developed? The BR plan had just said, as I indicated on the salient feature slide, that an investor must be found for Mango. And after it was adopted, that's when the business rescue practitioners then published the expressions of interest and identified the investor. Then the investor, together with the BRP, will then develop a business case, which we are looking for at this stage, and we're still waiting for. So it could not be done before the plan was adopted. It could only be done after that. You also raised the issue of the SAA process in terms of the value that we are attaining. SAA is still flying. It's out of the BR process. It's not liquidated. We've gotten 49%. We've got golden share as government. The strategic equity partner will be putting in 3 billion as working capital. We have a preference shares. So we believe that we have value for money in that regard. And that's the kind that we are looking for also in this Mango deal. On the issue of the Competition Commission, as I said, if the BRP has issues or concerns that there might be a breach of the Competition Act, we could jointly go to the Competition Commission and ask for an advisory opinion in that regard. And we had suggested to him that instead of giving that business plan to SAA, he can submit it to the department, because the department is not an operator. Although we are a shareholder, we are not an operator. But we can also approach the Competition Commission to settle this issue if he was willing to do that. You raised the issue of the licensing, which Edwin will cover in detail. But those licenses can still be applied for so that Mango can be able to proceed in that regard. Honorable Kashania, you've asked who's the preferred bidder and how much the bidder will pay. We can't give that information currently because the transaction is not finalized. The matter is before the court is sub judice. But once the transaction is finalized, the PFMA is approved, Competition Commission is approved, then we can give all the information about this investor. But unfortunately now, we are bound by the confidentiality undertakings, but more so also that the matter is before the court, that we are not able to give that kind of detail to you. Honorable Gumede, you asked if Mango is still a subsidiary of SAA. Yes, it's still a subsidiary of SAA until the SAA transaction is finalized, or until its investor process for Mango is finalized, whichever comes first. but as we speak now, it is still the subsidiary of SAA. You spoke about the issue of licensing. As I said, it can still be applied for, but Edwin will give us more information on that. The issue that you have raised on the accountability of the BRP, I think is the issue that Honorable Shabalala also covered. The business rescue process in terms of a Companies Act is a creditor-led process. So that's why the business rescue plan will go into the meeting of the creditors, and then the creditors will vote on that plan, and then the business rescue practitioner will then implement that plan. And it's unfortunate that, as a shareholder, you don't have much say in that regard. But if there is a sale of shares, like in this regard, it must come to the shareholder, and the shareholder must make the final decision on the shares. Those shares belong to the shareholder. There's no way the creditors, there's no way the business rescue practitioner can proceed to sell those shares without the approval of the shareholder representative. In this case, the minister is the executive authority. So hence he's then applying, made an application in terms of section 54 to the minister. And up until the minister says yes, there's nothing he can do. He can proceed with the sale. And hence he's taking us to court, Honorable Kumeja. In the unlikely event of us losing the case, because I believe we've got good prospect of success, without litigating through Parliament. It's a separation of powers. You can ask the court to force the minister to take a decision where all the information has not been provided. But let me not litigate through Parliament. But in the unlikely event that we lose the case, it will mean the application is approved, that investor, and then the matter will then go to the Competition Commission, as with the SAA transaction, and the Competition Commission will have to give its views, and then there will have to be a change of ownership with the licensing council, and then the investor will take over if we lose the case. I think that Honorable Shabalala covered your issues on the business case. Even SAA, Honorable Shabalala had actually concerns on the application. Even the first application that was submitted before we asked for information, they raised a lot of concerns about the investors and the fact that initially there was no due diligence. And how do you sell shares without the due diligence or a desktop due diligence? You can't do that. So those are the some of the issues that SAA has also raised, which we also as a shareholder has raised. I think Edwin can just cover other points and other colleagues that I may not have covered.
Thank you. Good morning, members. I think you've covered most of the questions. If I can just answer the ones that you have not covered. There was the question of how much has been paid to the business rescue practitioner. That one is on the slide 9 of the presentation, and the amount that has been paid to date is 25 million rands. So, and the budget for the business rescue practitioner is 26 million rands, so it's still within the budget. And the other question that you wanted me to also add on is the question of the licenses. The licenses, there were 2 licenses that were issued to Mango. One is the license for the routes for flying regional routes. That one was suspended for 24 months on the basis that Mango needed to come up with a plan of how it will start flying again on the regional routes. Since it's in business rescue, it's not flying those routes, but after 24 months, then it will then lose those routes, and they will be then open for other airlines to take up those routes. So as long as it can put up a plan on how it will start flying those routes, then it can keep those routes. So that is one part of the license. And then the other part is the Air Operating Certificate, which we call the AOC. That one, it has to apply every year to keep that license. So since it's not operating it hasn't applied to keep that license. So that's why it has been suspended. But as soon as it starts operating, it's ready to operate. You can apply for that license, and then the licensing council will consider the application. So those are the two questions that you didn't answer that I could add on. I don't know if there are any other questions that still need answers. Thanks.
Chair, that's it from my side.
Come again, DCG?
No, Chair, I'm saying from our side, yeah, those are our answers.
Okay, you have covered all the answers.
Can't hear you.
Let me show the hands. No hands. Okay, one hand from Honorable Kachalia. Is there any other hand? Carol, Piri, who else? Okay, I close it there, honorable members. I don't want anyone who will be provoked and start raising a question when these two honorable members are speaking. I'm giving to Honorable Kacharia, then to Honorable Piri, and I close there. Come, Honorable Kacharia.
Thank you, Chair. There are a couple of questions which weren't answered. One, probably because I wasn't very clear in making the question. So let me rephrase that one. 812 billion rands was paid to SAA for mango, but 727 billion was transferred to mango. That leaves 85 billion with SAA. Now, if that is not going to be transferred to, that 85 is not going to be transferred to mango, must it not be paid to the National Revenue Fund? It certainly can't be used by SAA. The other question was, what's the current cash balance in mango? And the third one was, are there any aircraft currently owned, not leased by mango? Thank you.
Honorable Piri, thank you, Honorable Kachalia.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity of a second bite. I'll go straight to my question is that currently, you know, expectations for the aviation industry for 2023, there's a slim chance margin of projected for 2023 and no profit projected for the African aviation industry. Does the PRB or the DPE, which is the department, believe that the delay of the FMA approval will be beneficial for rescuing mango? Because really, if there's a lot of delay, we don't see, on my side, I don't have hope for mango to come all right. Secondly, is that the effect of the delay in getting the PFMA approval on the business rescue process, as well as the financial effect of the airline, will simply destroy the effort and everything that we are trying to achieve. So I wanted to get more information and more clarity on the delay of the PFMA. How does it assist Mango Airline to go back to its own operation, and also in the fact of the attraction of the investors? Thanks, Chair.
Are you done, Honorable Piri?
Yes, Chair, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Let's take it back to the DDG, the DG and the DDG.
Thanks, Chair. I just think in terms of what Honorable Piri is actually saying is that I think what is fundamental on our side is that if we can do a misstep around undertaking a comprehensive due diligence and we bypass that step, then we run probably the risk of a risk of putting an investor whereby this deal is not going to be viable, and it will actually tip or even undermine the very efforts of us beginning to turn around these airlines. So I think from our side, it is we're being very prudent in our approach to insist on that so that we satisfy ourselves that we don't lead to, like Honorable Piri indicated, unnecessary delays whereby we need to restart the process. So we need to satisfy ourselves in that regard. So that is the point that I just wanted to underscore from the department side. And that's what I've also implored to the team, that it is important that this exercise is done quite extensively. And we are quite satisfied that we can, it's something that will be result in, the revival of the airline. I think I can hand over to Advocate Makobe and Edwin to answer the questions that were asked by the honorable members. Can I revert back to you?
Thank you, ADG. Yes, on the question of the 85 million that was not transferred to Mango, that is still with SAA. And in terms of the Appropriation Act, that money was specifically allocated for the subsidiaries, and therefore SAA cannot use that 85 million. So as soon as the entire process is completed, that money, if it won't be transferred to Mango, then has to go to the National Revenue Fund of National Treasury. So SAA cannot use that money for anything else. Thanks.
Advocate Makobe?
Yeah, I'm covered. And as we've indicated, that 85 million was the savings that we had asked the business rescue practitioner to negotiate with the creditors. And the intention is that it must go to the National Revenue Fund. And that's where we intended to take it for as a savings, so that the creditors can also make some contribution. And we are happy that they had agreed to reduce the amounts that they're going to be getting and giving us that 85 million.
Chair, there were two additional questions, very simple ones. What is the current cash balance of Mango, and does Mango have does it own any airlines?
Is it not the question that Mr. Mahobe said they cannot be in a position because of the sub judice of the issue? But can I?
No, that was another question.
Okay. Honorable Mr. Mahobe?
Okay, Edwin from our finance will talk about the cash balance.
Thank you. I'll answer that. That the amount that's remaining still with the business rescue practitioner is shown on slide 9 of the presentation, and that's 256 million. That's still with the business rescue practitioner.
Thank you.
And any airlines currently owned?
Honorable Kacharia, you are speaking.
I'd asked if additionally if there were any airlines currently owned, not leased by Mango.
Mr. Mahobe?
Yeah, Mr. Benson, back to you.
Thank you. Honorable members, we now reach the end of our session. And mine is to thank the Department of Public Enterprises, particularly led by the DG, by the acting DG and the team. We really appreciate your patience in answering all our questions pertaining first the first presentation and the second one. We would love to release you now and ask the members to remain kind.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Which is about the minutes of the previous session. Can I ask the secretary to present the minutes of the previous session?
Chair.
Oh.
In terms of that agenda, we had not tabled the minutes and not distributed them for the members because we thought the meeting would be longer than this if the BRPs were here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But perhaps you can touch on the issue of the meeting for next week, Chair.
Okay. You want to go there?
Yes, Chair. Just to say that in terms of our program, we had scheduled for Danielle to appear before the committee next week on the 8th. However, Danielle has not yet tabled their annual report to appear before the committee, and the committee must advise in terms of how do we proceed, Chair.
Yeah, I think I did hint at you that the next meeting next week, we will be asking the ESCOMs, the outgoing ESCOM CEO, to come and present to us the allegations that were thrown in the public domain about corruption at the ESCOM. He will be the person whom we are inviting to sort of take us through as to what did he mean by people continue to squander the limited resources that we had at ESCOM. I think the next meeting will be dealing with that next week in the light of Dinelle unable to sort of present the financials.
Chair, if I may.
Can I come in, Peter?
No, Chair, my hand is up. Can maybe you look at the screen whose hand is up? I hear Honorable Katrina just entering. I think please recognize according to the hands.
Okay.
My hand was up.
Oh, let me go to your hands, honorable members. I will go through all your hands. Katalia, Maotwe, Piri, accordingly.
Thank you, Chair. Simple question. I understand why Danielle is not coming and that ESCOM has been asked to come, but I'd like to for us to find out because when I requested support for my private members bill on annual financial statements to be presented timeously, I was told that no, it's all right. Treasury will be dealing with this. Now that was a long time ago, and if Treasury is not dealing with it, what are we going to do about this constant non-production of annual financial statements? And surely my private members bill, which is non-partisan, non-party, was just requesting that. So can we just push that one, please? Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Mawata.
No, thank you, Chair. I want to speak on the issue of the outgoing CEO. Can we perhaps have a physical meeting, Chair, as opposed to hybrid? So that we interact with him physically. I'm sure you can find a room in Parliament where we can have this meeting physically. That's my request, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Let me answer that one from this. We are always trying. In fact, even this meeting was not supposed to be visual. We are trying to always apply for this meeting, our committee, because we're all ready to meet in a physical session. But the problem that we have is limited space in Parliament, honorable members. Again, we will try to ask the Secretary to sort of check if there is no committee or people who are to use a particular place and then not there, and then we be squeezed into that particular venue. I don't know to what criteria they use in Parliament in order to prioritize committees that are meeting physically. I'm sort of also sometimes very uncomfortable with the manner in which they respond. Previously, they allowed us, and I did ask them why did they allow us and why the following week we're not, because we have been saying to them, we are ready to have our session physically, especially this committee, because it's a committee that handles the critical issues that are affecting the nation. Again, we'll try, Honorable Mawo, to do that. Honorable Piri.
Thanks, Chair. Maybe let me start with trying to put proposal on the issue of venue. I also sit in the other portfolio. Yesterday we met at Southern Sun due to the limited space in Parliament present. So maybe Udisang, when he applies, can also opt to take us somewhere like what I've experienced yesterday, which was not bad because you meet physically, and if that's what you want physically. But going back, Chair, what I want to check with yourself and Disang, it's an advice issue that you need to advise us, is that I've read somewhere and it was said the board quickly approved and released the data, which is the last day. It was yesterday on the 28th. Today is the 1st of March. So I want to check on which basis it will be called, because it's no longer in the entity. Wouldn't we be going out of the mandate of the committee because we are not an inquiry? That's why I'm saying I want to check and get a proper advice based on the fact that it's no longer in the entity, is now free because he has finished. But unless otherwise the information that I have is not correct. Yes, previously we were told it's gonna end somewhere in March, but now I just read it somewhere that it has been released. So I wanted to check already, will it materialize if we are making effort and wanting to meet physically and he end up not coming? Who are we going to blame? How is it going to be made? It's no longer in ESCOM. His fees, his cost flying in and out. Who will bear those costs at the same time? Not saying we don't want him to come. Yes, we are not happy about the way things are happening in the social media, as if we are not playing our own oversight. But maybe we need to do something differently to make sure we play our oversight differently. But I wanted as Chair to look into what I'm raising, and I feel or I need to be assisted in that basis. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable members, we're part of Parliament, and we're a committee of Parliament that is been tasked to play an oversight on state-owned entities, 7, but now 6 of them in the absence of South African Express. We have a responsibility to play that oversight. Therefore, as Parliament, we've got powers to call anyone, whether you work at ESCOM, whether you work anywhere, we've got a responsibility to follow anything that pertains to the terrain where we operate. Even if Mr. Director was never worked for Parliament, for ESCOM, if he would be implicated or you have to give to the Parliament some light of anything happening, we do have those powers, according to my knowledge of our understanding of the role of a committee of Parliament or a Parliament as a whole. That is our legal responsibility to follow everything that is to do with the terrain where we are deployed as members of Parliament. Therefore, it's our duty to call anyone here whose name or who's seem to be implicated on anything where we work. Whether he live or not, it's not there. It's not there. We will have to call anybody, even if he will never work for ESCOM. If he will say something that provide interest to us in relation to what we do, we will call that particular person. Honorable members, without wasting our time, I want us to end the meeting from there, in the light that we are not going to be in a position to engage on the minutes or adopt the minutes. Can I declare this session adjourned? Thank you.
Long live the chair.